codeIt now. So for this codeIt now we have two activities. The first one is print every third character between Z and A. So let's switch over to our JGrasp window and let's start a new file. Control N, hit enter for Java. And let's copy a file's contents like grade output. Since we're not going to be using a scanner object, we're just going to be doing some stuff inside the main method. Now let's change the name of our class. So instead of grade output, maybe we can just call this third character. Yep. And we'll change the class declaration name as well. Third character. Then we can delete the old stuff inside the main method since we don't need this anymore. All right. So since we want to print every third character between Z and A, we know that we're going to have to use a char to keep track of what character we're currently on. And we're going to need a while loop because we want to keep subtracting 3. So we want to start with char Z, subtract 3 from it, then get whatever that next char is, subtract 3 from that, get whatever that next char is, and we want to keep doing this until the value of our stored char is greater than or equal to A. And the reason we can subtract chars like this is because the way chars end up being represented in Java is just like actual numbers, or rather actual integers. But char is just constrained to a very specific amount of memory. Whereas integers, they let you have more memory so you can represent much larger numbers, whereas there's only, 26 letters in the alphabet. Okay, so for starting the code, we're going to define our char, so char, and we can just give it a name of, let's say, current, for the current char we're on, and we're going to start with Z. And we need a semicolon. And then we're going to need a while loop. But before we write the while loop, I'm just going to add in a comment here saying print out every third character between Z and A. Okay. So now we're going to want to write out our while loop. So while, and we want to continue printing while current is greater than or equal to A. And then we need to add our curly braces. Okay, and we indent. So now within the while loop, there are two main things we want to do. The first thing we want to do is we want to print out every third character. And the second thing we want to do is we want to subtract 3 from our current character. Because if we don't do that, then we're just going to keep staying on the same character, and this while loop will just go on forever. So let's print out first. So system.out.println, and we can just put in current here, semicolon, and then we need to subtract from current. So current. Now for this, since we're just going to be subtracting 3 every time, we don't have to write out something like this where we would say current equals current minus 3. Instead, what we can do is we can use the special operator minus equals 3. And this will get the same job done. And of course, don't forget your semicolon. So now that all that is done, this should be enough. So let's see if it works properly. So Control S to save. Accept the defaults, enter. Control B to compile. And yep, it compiled correctly, which is good. Operation complete. And then Control R to run. And let's see what we got. This seems to look correct. So we have Z, W, T, Q. Seems like it makes sense to me. All right, so codeIt now. So now we're going to move on to our second activity on this page. We already did the first one earlier. And we want to count by 100s and print each value between 0 and 10,000 with each number on a new line. Okay, so let's go over here, create a new file with Control N, enter for Java. And since this is also going to be using a while loop, it makes a lot of sense to copy the code from our third character file, rather the first activity we did on this Code It Now page. And Control V to paste it. Instead of third character, let's call this Count100s. And we change the class declaration name as well. Okay, so we want to go between 0 and 10,000. And we want to count by hundreds. So this idea of counting and printing out as we go along definitely implies that we need a while loop. And instead of a char and starting from the letter Z, we're instead going to need an int that we will just call, again, current, which makes sense. And we're going to start at 0. And let's change this comment because we're not printing out characters anymore. So instead, we'll just basically write the same thing as the description of what we wanted to do. So print out each, so we want to count by hundreds and print out each value between 0 and 10,000. There we go. And so we can keep this current here because this is exactly what we want. And since we're counting between 0 and 100, we no longer want a greater than or equal to. Instead, we want a less than or equal to. And instead of a character A, we want 10,000. Okay. And so we're going to print out current, which is great. So we already have this. So we don't really need to change much for this line. But we do definitely need to change the way we're changing the value of current. Because we no longer want to subtract 3. We instead want to add 100 each time. So we're going to say current plus equals 100. And again, like last time, we're going to use this plus equal because this will save us a little bit of typing instead of you saying something like current equals current plus 100. And that should be all of our code. So let's save it with Control S, hit enter to save, and then Control B to run, or rather compile. And yep, we compiled successfully, which is great. And then Control R to run. And yeah, this definitely looks correct. So just looking at it, oh wow, that's a lot of values printed out. But as we can see, it's going by hundreds, going from 4,200 to 4,300 to 4,400. And it started at, well, it ended rather at 10,000, and it started at 0. And each one is on its own line, just like we were asked to do.